Maryland's former governor makes it official. He is running for president. Martin O'Malley added his name to the growing list of 2016 hopefuls about an hour ago in Baltimore. Mike Canine is live there this afternoon with more on today's announcement and the protests that came along with it and sometimes during it. Mike.
That's right, Josie. First, take a look at the dramatic backdrop, the Inner Harbor here in downtown Baltimore. We're on Federal Hill where this event was held. Right now, a lot of crew members are breaking down the stage, a media riser, and putting away the barricades as well. The crowd is dispersed. A pretty sizable crowd, several hundred, maybe 1,000 or more gathered here for this event. And it was a hot event with a temperature, according to the Stormwatch 7 app, of 78 degrees. Felt like 81 degrees with the 69% humidity, big summer swelter. The event got underway a few minutes late, but Mr. O'Malley took the stage after a minor snafu when a video presentation did not have working audio. He took the stage and has also repeatedly traveled to early nominating states of Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, so not a big shock that he announced his campaign today. He is still largely unknown, both across the country and in the Democratic Party. However, he touts his progressive agenda in Maryland with stricter gun laws, same-sex marriage, an increase in the minimum wage. Many folks I spoke to here in the crowd say they would like to see someone like an Elizabeth Warren in this race, a more progressive voice than Hillary Clinton, but they are happy to support Mr. O'Malley. Now, there was several speakers who spoke before the former mayor of Baltimore and governor, the 52-year-old, took the stage, speaking about same-sex marriage. A gay man and a man with two moms spoke about that issue. A student talked about how Mr. O'Malley helped lower tuition costs, helped education funding, as well as an African-American man from Baltimore who spoke about the issue of drugs and crime here in this city, seeming to take on that issue, the criticism of Mr. O'Malley in recent weeks after the death of Freddie Gray and the unrest and protests that followed. When Mr. O'Malley took the stage, there was a big round of applause when he seemed to take a dig directly at Hillary Clinton and Republican contender Jeb Bush.
Recently, the CEO of Goldman Sachs let his employees know that he'd be just fine with either Bush or Clinton. I bet he would. Well, I've got news for the bullies of Wall Street. The presidency is not a crown to be passed back and forth by you between two royal families.
Mr. O'Malley has had to defend himself for his no-tolerance policies here in Baltimore during his term as mayor and his aggressive crackdown on crime. Many have called into question that approach after the death of Freddie Gray, and there were protesters, Josie, as you mentioned, who repeatedly interrupted the former mayor and governor, now presidential candidate. They were located just behind the media riser where we were, about a dozen of them, some familiar faces in this cause, shouting Black Lives Matter. At one point, one of them blowing a whistle. It started about midway through the speech. It was unclear, though, if Mr. O'Malley was distracted or even heard these protesters, but many supporters of Mr. O'Malley around them, were not happy to hear them speaking. But Mr. O'Malley did address this issue during his speech about midway through, talking about greater issues of poverty and income inequality. Take a listen.
There is something to be learned from that night. There is something to be offered to our country from those flames. For what took place here was not only about race, not only about policing in America, it was about everything it is supposed to mean to be an American.
There were a couple of familiar faces in the crowd here in Baltimore. Montgomery County Executive Ike Leggett, Prince George's County Executive Rushern Baker, both saying that their presence here today is an endorsement of the O'Malley presidential campaign. Also responding to those protesters, saying that it's unfair to blame Mr. O'Malley for the situation here in Baltimore for a tenure that was about a decade ago. Also saying that he helped reduce violent crime and make this city a better place. Mr. O'Malley joins a growing field of contenders contenders for the Democratic nomination, of course, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, as well as Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, Rhode Island Governor Lincoln Chafee, and Virginia former Senator Jim Webb, also said to be considering his own presidential campaign. Reporting in Baltimore, Mike Kinney, News Channel 8.
All right, thank you very much for your coverage of that rally in Baltimore, Mike.